What's your sense of the vibe compared to last year? I'm curious.
I get the sense of a little bit of like self-flagellation. It's been a long bear market and you can feel it. These other ecosystems tend to be trying to build one system to sort of optimize on one variable.
Yeah.
And Cosmos is building a system of systems. And the difference between that is like the difference between algebra and calculus. Act like a winner. This is kind of the message I want to give Cosmos, is like, recognize, take the W. You know, you don't have to be like all these other people or organizations and whatever that feel victimized. Like, Cosmos is actually the winner. They haven't figured it out yet.
Hey, Robert Kelley.
Hey, Seb.
What's going on?
Nice to see you here in Dubai.
Yeah. It's been a while.
It has been a while. I've been in the US for like 2 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of people in Cosmos may not recognize you, but they might know your work.
Right.
And yeah. So what have you been up to this last, has it been 2 years or a year?
1 year. So I came to my first Cosmoverse last year in Istanbul.
Yeah.
And I estimate about 60 people, tried to ask some similar questions about how they felt about the ecosystem, how they were doing themselves. And I wrote up a sort of summary of my observations and posted it on the Cosmos Hub forum.
Yeah.
And
what was that post called?
An organizational psychology perspective on the Cosmos Hub ecosystem, something like that.
Yeah. You got a lot of reaction.
It got a lot of reaction.
Including from some, like from Jay also, from Jay Kwan.
I think Jay, Ethan, Zaki, a lot of people wound up reacting, some stronger than others.
Yeah.
And what I think I was a little bit surprised about is that all kind of happened, and then nothing I couldn't really find a way to get any momentum from that in terms of engaging with the community.
Yeah.
So it's kind of been like my white whale, you know, like I've been doing my normal job, but I wake up in the morning and I think about the Cosmos ecosystem, and I go to bed at night and I think about the Cosmos ecosystem, and I've been percolating these ideas about how to engage with the community.
Yeah.
And it's been great to come back and see how people are doing and getting the reactions of people from like a year later, like, hey, I remember you. Like, yeah.
So it's kind of funny because, I mean, you know, we know each other from the kind of the Paris expat community.
Yeah.
You were one of my normie friends, and now you're one of my crypto friends.
Isn't it funny?
Yeah. So what is that day job? Like, what do you actually do for people who don't know?
Yeah. So I mean, I have a degree in organizational psychology.
What does that mean?
So it's you know, the basics of psychology, understanding human behavior, but especially in groups. And I work, as I call it, a work psychologist or a business psychologist. So understanding how people work in order to get things done.
Yeah.
So it could be a business, but it could also be a charity, or it could be a non-governmental organization.
Yeah.
But how do people come together? What does leadership look like? And yeah, how do people get things done?
Yeah. So people have, like, you know, this is like couples counseling, and you're sort of like business counseling. You come in and you, like, if an organization is having organizational issues or management issues or issues with like the team and management sort of not working well together, or, you know, some might see this as sort of like business coaching, but at the organizational level.
Yeah.
And you try to sort of work through those issues with people and find a better balance for everyone. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, you know, we'll do like when I do founders work, like that can look a lot like couples counseling. You know, you have two co-founders and they're not getting along. Sometimes that's like very analogous to a relationship.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's one leader who's struggling with how to connect with their employees. And sometimes it's a whole team that maybe it's a new team, or it's a team that's undergone some changes, and they're trying to figure out how to get back to the point where they're running on all cylinders.
Yeah. Now you take that, right? You take a team or a company that I think, generally is already like quite a close-knit group. They may be working in the same building.
Yep.
They've been working together for a long time. They're in the same Slack or kind of Teams groups or whatever. They also, I think, come into a company with a common purpose. How does that overlap with an ecosystem of teams? So you sort of scale that up to now an ecosystem of teams of people, some that have real sort of clear visions, so like a company, right? Or maybe just community members and contributors that, might gravitate and go from one team to another. I mean, it just seems like it's an impossible challenge to solve, right?
Yep.
But also a much more interesting challenge, because you're talking about really a global community of people with divergent interests. And
Well, and I think for me, that's one of the most fascinating things about the Cosmos ecosystem, because if you compare it to especially other crypto ecosystems, there's not a sort of visionary figurehead who can kind of, even if it's decentralized, technically, culturally, there's someone who can kind of make a decision. Cosmos doesn't have that. And that's both a strength and a challenge. And you're absolutely right. Like, there are so many different interests, so many different visions, and bringing that together has a potential of sort of getting to the best answer. That's the whole value of decentralization, is that you're getting all these different viewpoints, and you're bringing in all this different data. You're probably in the long run going to outperform one person with one vision, or a couple people with one vision.
But it can also fail tremendously. Like it can fail catastrophically.
But if you can't communicate, you can never get off the ground. And then obviously Cosmos has gotten off the ground. But there does seem to be a sort of like friction right now in productivity or in efficiency or whatever, because that communication is just not happening very, very easily.
Yeah. I was just talking to Vallejo from Quasar, and he has a way of thinking of Cosmos as, like a sort of there's like two facades to it. There's the tech and the liquidity. So it's like business in the back, party in the front, right? So you have, and it tends well to him because he's had a mullet at some point, I think.
It's the opposite way, isn't it?
Or
party in the back,
party in the back.
Right. Yeah.
So the tech is in the back, but then the liquidity. But we don't have any liquidity, or Cosmos doesn't have any liquidity, or very little compared to other ecosystems. But we have really strong tech.
Yeah.
So it begs the question, is the vision for Cosmos to have just really great tech that makes it into the broader kind of crypto ecosystem, or is it to have liquidity? And the way I like to look at this is kind of analogized to Linux. And in the 90s, Linux was sort of getting off the ground. Linus Torvalds built Linux on the Unix kernel, and there were all these different like nerds fighting about how, like, the vision for Linux and building competing distros of Linux. And there's maybe hundreds, or maybe like a significant number of Linux distributions, many of which no one's ever heard of, or very few people use. But then you end up having the Fedoras, the Ubuntus, and Slackwares, etc. But today, fast forward 20 years, we all use some version of Linux all the time, right? In our phones, in our computers. If you're using Mac or an iPhone or an Android phone, you're using a Linux backbone. Your connected TV has, some version of Android running on it. That's Linux. Your connected fridge, all your embedded devices, all of the server infrastructure, for the most part, I think with the exception of Windows, which also has quite a few now Linux components in it, is using this software. But do people think that they're using Linux? No, but as a result, we all have this better experience, this better kind of software and hardware experience as a result of this great work that was done in this early kind of chaos of the 90s. And I sort of see Cosmos as the same thing. And I wonder sometimes, does it really matter that Cosmos doesn't have the liquidity if the technology gets exported to Ethereum, to Solana, to all these ecosystems, to Bitcoin by, being the liquidity hub for kind of Bitcoin DeFi? Does it matter if, it doesn't make it to,
I mean, that's an interesting way to think about it, because, there is obviously the Cosmos has been this leader in technology and in technological vision. And, sort of famously, Ethereum has followed Cosmos and actually brought these Cosmos innovations to scale in a way that Cosmos hasn't been able to. But I think what's maybe different is that the vision of Cosmos actually, I think, is more important than the technology of Cosmos. And the vision is this idea of sovereign interoperability. And that, is made possible through the technology, but it's also a way of looking at the world. It's an ethos. And I feel like that's the part that's actually most important if you say Cosmos succeeds, and if it, whether they get the liquidity or not, does this ethos of sovereign interoperability wind up sort of becoming all pervasive across the entire crypto and like universal ecosystem?
Yeah. So what are the things you think that Cosmos needs in order to be able to move forward? Actually, maybe before that,
Yeah.
I think before we get to that, what is your sense of the vibe here? I know it's only day 2, but what's your sense of the vibe compared to last year? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, which is, I get the sense of a little bit of like self-flagellation, like a little bit of, we've been bad, we're not, doing things the right way, and a lot of it does feel like it's tied to market performance. But the thing is, when you look across the broader crypto market, aside from like Bitcoin, no one's really thriving. In the last 12 months, you don't really see anyone.
Well, Solana,
but even Solana's been kind of, I haven't followed closely, but they've been a little flat, right? And I think that there's a little bit of we're especially bad. And look, this is based on just a few conversations so far. This is only the morning of day 2. But yeah, like it's not, it's been a long bear market.
Yeah.
It's been a long bear market and you can feel it.
Yeah. I mean, it could be worse. We could be Algorand.
Sure. I mean,
like some other kind of, ecosystem.
Yeah.
Very few users. And at least, I mean, I think what Cosmos has going for it is like people still see Cosmos as having like a lot of gigabrains.
Yeah.
And from my conversations here have been, I think the sense is that it sort of feels like the bottom of the Cosmos bear market, regardless of what's happening in the rest of the ecosystem and how other ecosystems are thriving or attracting liquidity or whatever. It feels like a lot of the people who were not fully aligned or did not really believe in the vision are no longer here, or have left, or like are doing other things, or maybe focusing on other things. This is anecdotal, right? This is what people have told me, right? How they think about it, and that those who are still here are really sort of aligned with this long-term vision, even though the vision, I think, often has maybe different people have different paths to get there. The long-term vision of sovereign infrastructure, interoperability, etc., I think is are still the core pillars.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, one thing that this sort of long drought has done is driven the people who were here for other reasons away.
Yeah.
And I have in the conversations I had yesterday, people seem to be like, hey, we look around and all right, now the people that are left are the people we want to work with.
Yeah.
I did get that feeling as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, what are your recommendations? Having like looked at the space and
Yeah. I mean, my assessment of Cosmos is that
you talked about three things before.
Yeah. So first of all, Cosmos is really unique. Like I was just at a different crypto event last night, like non-Cosmos, and the vibes are so different. It's really, there is something like really genuinely, it's weird. It's weird given the way that Cosmos tends to operate, but people are really nice here. People are really curious. They're really...
Greg Rasuri of Akash tweeted yesterday that Cosmos is like the only genuine crypto ecosystem left.
Yeah,
and authentic. I'm paraphrasing.
Authentic is I think is a great word. Like people really are interested in what you have to say. It doesn't have that sort of feeling of a bunch of sharks just circling, looking for the easiest short-term opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's maybe people take for granted. That what a special place this is. And I would add one thing to it, which is, I mentioned earlier, these other ecosystems tend to be, they're very smart people, but they tend to be trying to build one system to sort of optimize on one variable.
Yeah.
And Cosmos is building a system of systems. And the difference between that is like the difference between algebra and calculus. Like, it's a whole other level of complexity. And it's harder. It's like way harder. Lots of people like were great at algebra and got to calculus and really struggled with it. And I think that's another thing that maybe is not appreciated in among the Cosmos ecosystems. What we're doing here is really hard. It's really new. It's really hard. It's really abstract. It's like, you once you start going and you do calculus, and then you start getting to, like, I don't know, number theory or whatever higher order mathematics there are. When you kind of do that work, you're not as grounded. Like, the person who's the most grounded is like the farmer. It's just, when you're doing this really abstract cognitive work day in and day out, it's hard to stay balanced. And I think that's one of the reasons why I feel like there's a lot of work that I'm interested in doing with the Cosmos ecosystem, because there's it's hard to do this work. And so so the first point was it's really unique. The second one is it's really hard. And just in the short term, you're not always going to be rewarded by the market for doing this sort of higher order work. So the third thing I guess I'd say is there's a sense I get in the Cosmos ecosystem, and it's, what I'm going to say, actually it's universal right now. I'm going to use a cat metaphor because
cats will become relevant later in this conversation.
Cats are pretty relevant now.
Yeah.
Cats, their like strongest move they can make is when they're on their backs, kicking with their hind legs. And when a cat's attacked, that's what a cat does. It gets on its back and it kicks. And I think that people can look at that and say, oh, if I want to be my strongest, what I got to do is get on my back and kick.
Yeah.
But that's adopting a defensive posture. And that works when you are literally being attacked. But when you're trying to be on the hunt, when you're trying to build things and get things done, you have to be on your feet.
Yeah.
And I don't think this is necessarily unique to Cosmos. I think we're seeing this sort of like trend of, sort of victim mentality across, the broader culture. But I think it's especially it's especially unproductive in this context of Cosmos, because Cosmos is like a winner. Cosmos has achieved this sort of highest level of complex, abstract thinking, and then we get on our backs. And it's like, no, act like a winner. This is kind of the message I want to give Cosmos. It's like, recognize, take the W. You don't have to be like all these other people and organizations and whatever that feel victimized. Like, Cosmos is actually the winner. They haven't figured it out yet. Everyone else is late to the party. They're going to get there. So keep doing your thing. Be on your feet. Get on your feet. Anyway, that's my pep talk. That's my pep talk to the Cosmos.
It's the pep talk everybody needs right now. I just noticed your T-shirt says how much worse can it get.
Well, this is the AA Down T-shirt for this year.
Yeah.
That's
very apropos.
Shout out to Rena and whoever else worked on that.
Yeah, I feel that because like when we launched the fund a year ago, our go-to-market for the fund was very much like, hey, we invest in the Cosmos ecosystem and modular and whatever, but our thesis and kind of the genesis of the vision for the fund was Cosmos. And that had a lot to do with kind of my background and the ecosystems that I had invested in the past and my affinity in the Cosmos ecosystem. And we raised on this thesis, on this vision. And a lot of investors were, whether they or not they invested, were interested because they were not exposed to this space. So it might have been folks who were like in Bitcoin or in Ethereum or in Solana and saw that Cosmos had all these gigabrains and all these really smart people building cool tech, and also that the Cosmos vision was being adopted in other ecosystems like Ethereum with the roll-up-centric roadmap. And so this was really appealing, and people respected that. Over time, though, there's been a noticeable shift, I think, in people's perception of Cosmos. And so people used to say, oh, you're a Cosmos fund. Interesting. And then now, and the fact that we're a Cosmos fund is sort of a meme, I think, like, right. But now people are like, oh, you're a Cosmos fund, right? So the perception of us investing in Cosmos, as real or not as that might be, is kind of shifting. And so it's led us to also be a little bit defensive, right? And some, admittedly, like I'll respond by saying, well, we don't only invest in Cosmos. Like, we've made investments of Movement, and we're like very bullish on that ecosystem. We've invested in infrastructure that works like sort of across the ecosystem, but there is that kind of like defensive position of, and that I've also noticed other projects now adopting, which is distancing themselves from Cosmos. Projects like Safe, for instance, that started as a Cosmos project and very kind of aligned with Cosmos and using the stack, and now have really distanced themselves from that branding, or at least for quite a while, actually. Barachain also, and so a lot of folks, I think, like, use Cosmos tech but want to distance themselves from, like, it's the mullet, right? So they want to have the mullet, but they don't want to have the party in front, right? Yeah. Or at least they don't want the party that Cosmos has in its front, which is like lack of liquidity. So I think that resonates with me, and probably like with other people also.
Yeah. And I mean, I want to be clear. This isn't about, like, your branding strategy might not include Cosmos. I think it's more about the posture that you take with regard to the work that you're doing. This is really important work. It's good work. And if it's not being rewarded by the market right now, that's not necessarily a signal that you're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about your cat cult.
Right. So, so my experience, I think I mentioned quickly at the beginning of our chat, was that after that I made the post and it kind of went viral and whatever. I tried to, so normally the work that I do, I work with organizations, and they pay me by the hour or by the day, and I work as a practitioner, and that culture doesn't exist. I probably in broader Web3, like Web 2 has a budget for leadership development, executive coaching, like team building and that kind of thing, and the companies, we're talking about much smaller companies in Web3 that don't necessarily have that sort of ability, or even that instinct to like, well, let's train our managers. It's like we have a position, we need to put someone in there to manage. Do it, learn on the job, like jump in the deep end kind of thing. And so I was a little bit frustrated that I couldn't get any traction in terms of, and so if I care so much about this ecosystem, really like the people, really feel like there's a lot of great work to be done, how do I do that? And so well, my vision, I guess, for the cosmos is that if you're going to be this sort of like highest level of complex abstract thinking, you also need to be best in class at communication. Because that's where you're like, think about it, you're like way out in space, you're super far apart now. Being able to communicate between these huge long distances, and they could be intellectual distances or however you want to think about it, is just super important. And if you're using the sort of communication technology, if you want to think of it that way, that people are using when they're sitting around a table, it's not going to work. So what I thought, like, what's a fundamental thing that is already working in Cosmos is this idea of sovereign interoperability. And people want to be free, but they also know they need to communicate. And if we could just get an opt-in community of people who said, hey, I'm in, I want to communicate with other people. I know I'm not always going to agree, but I can see everyone's point of view, and it's valuable to see other people's point of view for the collective intelligence, of the community. Then let's start with that. Let's start with the opt-in, and the people who don't want to opt in can, choose not to opt in. And that gave this idea of this oath, and the oath is, if I have a problem or an issue, conflict with anyone else who's also taken this oath, I will seek to find a win-win resolution with the help of the community if necessary. And it's a seek, like there's no guarantee, whatever, but I'll try. And I thought, okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to put together this community. But it's kind of like, as you've heard, it's like a long spiel to like get someone interested. So I was thinking, what's a shorthand for this? And this is where we get to cats. Cats have this, cats are social animals. And cats do this, lions do this, which is when they want to signal to another cat, they're not there. I'm not here to fight you. I'm not in predator mode. They do something called the slow blink, where they close their eyes for maybe a second or two. And it's like you show a little bit of vulnerability. And you say, hey, I'm chill. Yeah. I come in peace. And I thought, well, that's it. That's like the slow blink. That what I'm trying to say is, everyone, we're out here, we're kind of like, a little bit on edge. You see someone looking at you like, are they about to attack? And you get in that defensive posture. So if we can all like sort of do the slow blink physically or just metaphorically, then maybe we can get to the point where we can start having some more like better conversations, some more giving the benefit of the doubt, and really recognizing that, okay, you might not agree with what I say, but I can see where you're coming from. Maybe I can learn a little bit from it. So the way it works is it's an NFT that you mint when you take the oath. We worked with the team at Asteroid who does inscriptions in the Cosmos Hub. So it's kind of like the Cosmos or the Web3 equivalent of like swearing on a holy book. You inscribe your name next to this oath, and you upload your profile picture and you put a little picture of a cat on it. So you can, on the forum or on social media, show that, hey, I'm a member of this group that's trying to like work on communication. And for me, it's, if we can build this community of people who think that this is an important thing to do, that we have to do collectively, that's what I'm trying to do and we can seed it here in Cosmos, but it's not just for Cosmos, it's for everyone. Like someday maybe the whole world can understand that and this is like the mythology of the cult, is that cats are giving us a gift. They're like, hey, we need you humans to succeed if we want to have our lives of leisure.
Yeah.
So if you guys could chill out and learn to work together, then we're all going to be good. So yeah, that's it.
So Slow Blinks on Asteroid. You launched it yesterday.
Slow Blinks on Asteroid.
The first one.
The first one has been minted, and hope to get a lot of people in the community.
Cool. So people can mint their Slow Blink. Is it called Slow Blink?
Yeah, there's 4 different cats you can choose from, and depending on how much you want to be a part of the project. And maybe I should add, there's a meme coin associated with it too. So every month for the next 19 years, we'll do an airdrop exclusively to holders of the NFT.
Why is it 19 years?
Because Thomas Jefferson said that no law or constitution should bind a group of people for longer than a generation. And he defined a generation as 19 years. And so...
And also, it's sort of the life of a cat. Cats are usually like...
It is exactly about the life of a cat, too.
Yeah.
So here we go. This is cat number 1. And after this cat lives out its life, the world's going to be a completely different place. But I think that the ethos of sovereign interoperability is one that will last the long, long term.
Doing God's work, man. Thank you.
Cat's work. Thanks, Sam.